Hey guys, Toppe here. One of the main questions I get when I stream is, how do I become a better AD carry? And usually this question is really hard for me to answer because immediately I start thinking about a lot of fundamentals and stuff that you should know as an AD carry. And I know the people who ask this kind of question is just looking for a simple answer that will make them better overnight. And therefore I'm making this series. In this series, I'll be teaching you guys the fundamentals that I focus on as a master AD carry and how you can implement them into your own gameplay. And I will guarantee you that if you do this correct and you're below masters currently, you'll 100% see improvement in your gameplay. But don't expect to see results overnight because these fundamentals and habits that you should build is something that takes time and effort. In this video, I'll be teaching you about winning based on the concept of having better wave management than the opponent. Wave management is something I get asked about quite a lot, and I would actually say it's the most important thing as an AD carry to have under control, because if you are good at wave management and better than the enemy ADC, you're usually going to create early game leads that will transfer into the mid game, which means your team will usually have more drakes, more objectives, just in general an overall lead that will make the whole game so much easier to win once you get it into the mid game. With all of that being said, let's get right into the video. Onto the Rift 3 arm. Home sweet home. Alright, let's take a closer look at bot lane. Now, to understand wave management, you have to understand the 4 different wave states. Here we got a neutral wave, something that happens every game since the first wave of the game always will be neutral if no player is manipulated. The second state is a pushed wave. This is when you or the enemies have the minions under the opponent's turret. And the third state is a slow push, which you often see right after a pushed wave because the minions on the side that the wave has crashed into now start stacking up, and therefore it will slowly go towards the enemy side. The last state is a frozen wave. This is when the wave is just stuck in one spot and it's not being allowed to move to either side. That's basically the 4 laning states we have. Now I'll give you an example of how the different laning states are used in one game. In this game I'm playing Kaiser with a Seraphine into Ezreal and Nautilus. The first thing you want to do when getting into lane is analyzing the matchup, because that determines how we're going to play this game. The first thing I do is always look at the ranged versus melee. In this case, we are 2 ranged into 1 ranged and 1 melee. This means we should be playing aggressive while slow pushing. By playing aggressive, I don't mean running at them, but instead playing behind the back of our melee minions, like the red line illustrates. If Ezreal or Nautilus then walks up, we hit them while they can return anything by standing behind the minions. Ezreal can't poke us with the Q, and Nautilus can't hit his Q either. If Ezreal walks up to auto-attack me or Seraphine, we are 2 ranged, and therefore we can auto-attack 2 times back, and that makes it an unfavorable trade for Ezreal. The whole reason to be slow push is we want to make sure we get level 2 before the enemies by always having an extra minion on our side. Yes, we could also be pushing it out and making sure we get level 2 before them like that. But if we do that, we're not allowing the enemies to make mistakes, and we're also not denying any CS or XP that we potentially could have. Often you'll see the range/melee contesting the early wave even though they can't. This is where we punish them for walking up. Right now they basically can't walk up, and the best Ezreal can do in this lane is last hit with Q from the distance. What we can do is try and bait the enemies by juggling in front and behind of the minions to try and make Nautilus use his Q towards us. As soon as he fires his Q, we should already be behind the minions again, and therefore his Q will hit a minion, pushing himself towards us with no escape. This might potentially earn us a kill, or at least it will get us a summoner spell. So this is another way to play the lane. Okay, so you might wonder why I spend so much time on just the beginning of a game. There's a very simple reason for that. I see so many games being determined just based on the first 3 waves. And it might sound crazy, but the first 3 waves can easily determine whether you're going to lose or win a game. So that's why I find it really important. The key things I want you guys to take away from this is when you're going into a game, think about ranged advantage. Are you playing 2 ranged into a melee ranged? Then you probably want to be playing aggressive like we just showed earlier. Strong points. What makes your comp strong? Let's say you have a Soraka support. That means you have healing. If the enemy team doesn't have healing, that means you can take small trades because you can get healed back up and slowly push the enemies out of the lane that way. Weaknesses. Does the enemies have an ability that if it lands, it would absolutely kill you? If so, try to play around it. what I usually do is if I'm playing an ADC with a dash, I hold the dash for the ability that would absolutely kill me to make sure it doesn't hit me. Jungle paths. This is something we haven't really talked about yet, but jungles have a huge impact whether if you're allowed to play aggressive, take even HP trades, or even stay in your own lane. Okay, so once you guys know all of this, you can kind of use this as like a checkmark sign. You go through all the key points because this is something you can go through every single game, and it's something I go through every single game just in my head. I don't always say it out loud when I stream, but I will always do it. I always go through it, and if you're not going through these kind of things, I would say you're out of piloting. So therefore, you should always be thinking about stuff like this. And now, let's get into jungle paths. Okay, so if you look at this map, this is a game where I actually played Ivy's Siva. So what this picture looks like is that we're just leasing our Rammus, right, with his red buff. But what I'm actually doing right now is I'm looking at the mini-map, and if we take a closer look, we can see that Irelia is topside. And the bot lane is missing. This means either two things. The bot lane might be trying to cheese us in a bush, trying to do some insane play, or they're helping Zed with the blue buff, which would make a lot more sense because I'm pretty sure, I don't know Zed's clears that well, but I'm pretty sure he can't do buffs alone. So in this game, I just assumed that they're helping him with clearing his blue buff. And if we reveal the map, then you can also see that I was right. So just based on this information, I pretty much knew where the enemy bot lane were, and I also now know where Zed is, which is really important to me, and this is something I'll get into in just a sec. So now with the knowledge of Zed starting a blue buff, we can kind of picture his jungle path. Even though I am a Masters AD carry, I don't understand jungle completely, so I don't know if Zed usually skips some camps, therefore I just assume he doesn't. So assuming Zed full clears, he will do his blue, then go to Gromp, and then go to Wolves. Once Zed has cleared the entire bot side, I don't know a jungle perfectly, instead I just play around the 2-minute rule, and I call this a 2-minute rule because this is where most junglers finish one jungle side. And since Zed now has finished around the 2 minutes, he now has two options. He can even go from Wolves to bot side and try and gank, which is really risky, considering that he most likely knew that Rammus started bot side since released, and our top laner actually showed in the early game, if you guys paid attention when I showed the minimap. So he should know that Rammus started bot side and most likely have cleared his bot side camps, and therefore if he decides to gank bot lane and the bot lane gank fails, he has nowhere to go since our bot side camps are down, and therefore he would have to recall and go back to top. And this is like a lot of time wasted where Rammus might actually even have stolen his red buff in the meantime, putting Zed really far behind. And because Zed is not really a high kill early game champion because he has no CC, I feel safe to assume that he takes the safe route and paths to top side. And knowing that Zed is top side now allows me to play more aggressive without having to worry of Zed ganking me. Okay, so getting into the actual game, we can start out by talking about the 4 key points that we talked about earlier. And in this case, we do have the range advantage since we're 2 ranged into a Alistar and Draven, which is 1 melee and 1 ranged. What you guys might notice then is that we actually don't end up getting the lane prior as I stress about that we should get because we're double ranged, and there's a really simple reason for that. So Draven and Alistar, as you guys might notice, they actually arrived to the lane a little before us because they leashed less to Zed than we did to the Rammus. And therefore he gets to hit our minions a few more times before I can even get to the wave. And because Draven is such a hard early game minion hitter, like he does so much damage, I end up not really being able to contest the level 2, which actually frustrated me a lot this game because as soon as I see that I'm double ranged and they're only 1 ranged, I always go and try to get the early level 2 before them. But in this game it ended up not happening. And that's kind of like the thing about rules. There's always some exceptions, right? So yeah, in case you guys are ever 2 ranged into a melee range, if the melee and the range arrive to the lane before you guys, you might actually not be able to get the early prior, and then it's better to just fall back and let them get level 2 before you, and you guys just try to soak the XP and get level 2 around the same time as them. Just make sure you don't die, right? Okay, so if you look at the strong points, I am playing with a Seraph and Siva, so I can instantly tell that we have a really long range compared to a Draven Alistar, and therefore we just want to be playing the range. I just want to be spamming my Q, and Seraph just want to be spamming all of his abilities because they're super long range. So that's really the main thing we want to do. While if you look at the weaknesses, Alistar and Draven has a really hard engage. Like if I get knocked up by Alistar and Draven is next to him, I'm pretty much going to die. So I really want to avoid at all costs being knocked up by Alistar. And if I am going to be knocked up by Alistar, Draven just can't be close to me. And the jungle paths, that's what we talked about earlier. This is the same game with the set, so I'll keep the map unhidden for you guys so you can see where set is pathing, so that might make some sense on the reason I play as I do. Okay, if you actually pay some attention to what just happened on the screen while I was talking about the strong points, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we ended up building a pretty big wave, as you can see here. And the reason we did that was because Draven and Alistar was pushing really hard into us, but we were able to hold their wave right in front of our turret, and it never actually crashed. And then once Alistar and Draven backed off, which I really didn't understand, then we just insta-pushed the next wave to get it on and match their recall. And it's really important that you try to match your opponent's recall, because otherwise they'll come back much stronger than you, and then you'll basically lose every trade you take. And you'll just not be able to like play the game because they're stronger than you in general. So I always try to match my enemies' backs. And one of the key things when you do take backs is you do never want to take backs like the Alistar and Draven just did right here, because what they did is they backed on a small wave, which is a 6 minion wave. I just call them small waves. Or a not cannon wave, you could also say, because it has no cannon. And when you back on a no cannon wave, if we do as me and the serve that here, we just shove in the wave really hard, and they're gonna lose pretty much this entire wave. So now I'm up in CS, even though I was getting pushed in, and I was having a pretty hard time in the laning phase. But because they take a bad back, we actually end up coming on top of this first, I guess you could call it reset, so round 1 of the lane. Okay, and if you then look at our rival back to lane, you can see what I have bought and what the Draven have bought. So the reason I have bought 2 longswords is because I had 700 gold, while Draven probably didn't have that much gold because he bought a cull and a refillable potion. I just forgot what that was named. So already here, I'm pretty much stronger in lane than Draven is. I do not want to take auto attack trades with him though, because his Q still does a lot more damage than my autos do. But my Q trades will now do more damage, and I will actually have I'll be more likely to do a favorable trade from my side, because I have the 2 long swords while he only has the cull. On the arrival back to the lane, you guys can see that we already have another huge wave coming into us. And that's because we pushed in that huge wave before we reset, which means that the wave is slowly stacking up and we are creating the slow push towards us. And once again, we are just holding the waves like slightly right in front of our lane, but we are not freezing it. Because I didn't really see a reason to do that right now. So I was just like kind of holding it, building up another slow push by still keeping a majority of our minions on our side, while it will slowly go towards the enemy time. So if you guys look at the minimap here, they're actually fighting in river and it chose not to go. And this might be a mistake. I would say it wasn't, because my team ends up winning it. But even if they do not end up winning it, I would probably not have gone here, because I don't think it was a good timing for me to leave the wave, because then it would have crashed into my turret. Alright, this is where future Toppe just steps in for a little bit. So the wave wouldn't have crashed into my turret. As you can see, we have a huge wave going towards the enemy turret. So what I meant to say is that if I leave the wave here, my wave will slowly kill the entire enemy wave and stack up towards the enemy turret. And if the fight only lasts long enough for it to just get to the enemy turret, and then the fight is done, if Draven then is healthy enough to go back to lane, he has basically lost nothing from this entire wave state, while I have lost an entire wave of XP and gold, which is putting me pretty far behind in lane. So that's why you don't want to leave lane generally when the wave is slow pushing even towards or against you in lane. And you can also see it on the node right under the webcam. But one mistake that you then can see on the map is that Draven actually recalled after the fight, and I think that was because I wasn't paying attention. Maybe I didn't see he got low or something. This is in a spectate mode, so you can't see where I move my camera. I'll try to make sure I get the actual recording next time. But I don't think I looked, because if I knew that Draven would have recalled, I should have pushed right away to deny him as many minions as possible. Because this time, he actually arrives to the lane that we just crash in, and he ends up getting the entire wave that pretty much just crashed in there, which was huge. But it does set up another free recall for me, so I do take that. And I end up getting another good bag where I'll probably have a gold beneficial over Draven because he were out of lane for so long while I was just farming. So I should be up quite a lot of gold by now. And if you do look at what I bought, you can also see that now I have a Noon Quiver, and all that Draven extra card was a longsword. So now I'm like way up, and I can slowly start taking like auto trades with him if I do it correct. But I still don't just want to go run at him and take auto trades because he's most likely going to win them, especially if I get knocked up by the early star. But if you then look at the arrival back to the lane, once again, because I crashed a huge wave, and this is kind of like rinse and repeat, now the wave is coming back to me again. And this time I actually spend a little of the free time I have before the wave comes in because I don't want to walk up to his face. I just put a pink ward on Drake to make sure we vision and that, and I start slowly thinning out this wave while poking Draven. And you can see now, because I am having such a big gold lead over Draven, I also become much more comfortable with playing a lot more aggressive now, and I'm a lot less scared than what I was in the beginning of the lane because I'm way up in gold now, so I can just take way more aggressive trades than what I would be able to do before. But once again, I do really like having the wave towards our side in this lane, because that makes it pretty hard for Alistar to find any engages, and it also makes it easier for us to get ganks. Like you can see right now, Syndra's been roaming with Rammus from the Tribush, and we end up picking up Draven as another kill, and we almost got the Alistar, but he got out with Flash. And because we get a kill now, we fast shove the wave. And then one thing you always want to do, because now Rammus is going to call Drake here, one thing I always do before I go to Drake is I check the turret to see if there's a low plate. If there's a low plate, I'll usually just go take that one plate and then go to Drake. In this case, there was no low plate. The what's it called? The fifth plate was just gone down by minions, so there was nothing for me to get. And therefore I just go straight to Drake. I get another recall. And this time the wave is not as good, but it's still pushing back to us because we just crashed the wave. And since we just killed Draven, once again, now I'm kind of just snowballing my lead over him. And now I think he had a pickaxe. Let me just check. He had a pickaxe on his spy, and I also had a pickaxe. So now I'm still that Noon Quiver up on him. And I got an extra pink ward. Because I'm this ahead, I always like having pink wards. Just one in my inventory in case we're going to do like a roam onto Herald, or we're going to do the Drake. I always want to make sure I have a pink ward for my team to put on the objective in case no one else has it, to deny the enemy vision on it. Okay, so going back to the wave one more time, as you can see, Draven. Okay, so one thing I actually would like to mention is this is probably one of the this is in Master Elo, but this is probably one of the easier lanes I had, because this Draven is kind of playing with the mentality of I'm Draven, I'm alpha, I push, right? Because this is the only thing he's been doing this lane. He's just, every time I done anything bad into him, he's just pushed it right back into me. There's been no punishment, because some of the times he could actually have held a freeze on me, or at least just tried to hold the wave on his side for a little bit, but he always just non-stop pushed it into my face. And that makes it really easy for me to play, especially when I'm ahead of him, because his jungler is pretty much unable to gank me, and I just get to free farm under my turret and take some stuff. But since my support is not in lane, I don't really want to solo fight a Draven, so I just stay under my turret. And as you can see here, he's just shoving the wave back right back in my face, which I really don't understand why he would do. Alice is clearing out vision, which is actually good for him. And I just stay under my turret. So one thing I actually learned this game is that I can't shield block Alistar's knockup, because his headbutt takes my shield, spell shield, before the knockup, which is something I didn't know, and it's also something you saw in the early game where I actually got knocked up by Alistar because I thought I could spell shield it. But because you're winning so hard, it turns out not to be a really big deal. But in future matchups, I really gotta watch out for the fact that I can't spell shield an Alistar engage, because that can be pretty crucial. But since we now have a really big lead, me and Sarah is just full on shoving. I wouldn't say full on shoving, but we're just full on playing aggressive, trying to zone Draven out of XP, while, you know, taking a small auto trades. And this is where I actually got a little too greedy, because I didn't see that Zoe was roaming, and I end up almost dying to it. So this is where I actually got maybe a little too confident in the fact that I have a gold lead, and almost died. Zoe then goes really ham on me, and I don't think she thought about the fact that I have an exhaust, so I end up picking her off as a kill. And this time I just run out with my ult, because I was afraid that Alistar or Draven might flash in and kill me. And then I make one of the biggest rookie mistakes, which actually got me so mad in the game. on myself is that I ran back into Draven, knowing that he was already dead to the Syndra and Seraph. And that actually got me like really upset about myself, because that is just such a rookie mistake, and I should just have gone out. I flashed his ult, which was good because I'd rather be safe than sorry. So I don't know why I even go back in. I could just stand behind, like really far behind, given Seraph my ult buff, and then just, if in case Draven were gonna go in for me, he would at least not make sure to reach me. And this is like one thing you also gotta keep in mind is like, once the enemy realizes he's 100% dead, if he sees an opportunity to all in someone and maybe get a kill, he's like most likely going to take that over just going to die, right? So it's something you just want to like keep in mind. Like if the enemy is dead no matter what, and you don't have to be a part of that, you know he's gonna die even if you just go back, you should just go back, because he might just go all in on you if you are low or something, like he did on me. But yeah, since now we arrived back to lane after respawning, I'm just hard shoving. I see Alistar was topside, so I actually want to dive him. And this is where I like play really aggressive, and my Rammus comes in, and we actually pick up a pretty free drive, even though there's a teleport coming in. Rammus dies because he went the wrong way. I don't think he had any choice though. He would die to tower otherwise, so he's pretty much dead because Zoe roams down, picks him up. But me and Seraph are pretty much out alive, and we denied Draven another huge wave. I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was a pretty big wave on the tower that we denied Draven. So we're pretty much just putting him further and further out of the game by playing like this. And at this point, we're so ahead. Like I said, if Alistar's not bot lane, we can just dive to Draven. We don't need Rammus to do it. It just takes a little time, because I need Seraph to even land his E, or just eventually poke him far enough down to the fact that we can just kill him on the tower. But now, I think the laning phase is pretty much over. We take one more push, and then if I remember correct, I just recall. Oh no, this is actually one of the... Oh god. Yeah, fuck it, let's just show it. This is where I fuck up really bad. I don't think it's bad of me to stay because I have Kraken, so I'm pretty confident I can win. But as soon as I use that spell shield, I just insert the game. Or insert into Aurelia, and... Luckily, my Seraph just hard smurfs, and I don't know how the fuck he hit every single ult and his W. I was like really impressed with that. But if I use my spell shield correct, like you can go back and watch it. Like I think I don't die here. Like I'm pretty sure I don't die to her. But because I used my spell shield before she hit her E on me, I end up dying to it. And yeah, this is pretty much the end of the laning phase. Once after this, I pretty much just start going mid lane, and the Drake is coming up, so we want to make sure we get that. I think Rammus and Lee takes that. So I just start going mid now because the laning phase is pretty much over. And yeah, I hope this game gave you guys like quite a good idea of how you could play a lane. I didn't really show you any freezes in this game, but I think just in general, you don't want to do all the 4 states in every single game. In this game particularly, we just pretty much rinse and repeated slow pushing into us, like making waves that would slow push into us by hard shoving, then recalling, going back, and getting favorable recalls. And the thing about recalling is, if we get the recall like the last recall, and it's a good last recall, so we can come back to wave and we don't really lose anything, then we have the most money in our pockets because we recalled the last, which means we often get one more wave in. And in this case, we were able to get that extra longsword, which sometimes you're not able to get anything extra, but sometimes you're also able to get like an extra longsword or something. So it's really good to take the last recall, but sometimes you also just want to take the recall to make sure you don't die or something. And Seth didn't really play around bot side this game. He was pretty much always showing in the mid side or top side, so I didn't really have to worry about that. But yeah, I hope this game in general gave you guys like some idea of how you could play a lane, how you can like make slow pushes. And I also said like there was places where we could have frozen the wave here, but I didn't really have a purpose because Seth was playing so much topside, and I just wanted to make sure that we could, you know, get favorable stuff in our lane. And building up slow pushes towards them made us able to get the dive from Rammus, and we were also able to just in general like build that lead over Draven because he was permanently pushing into us. And you know what? I think this Draven in this game, he was actually autopiloting like insanely. I don't even know like how to describe it. Like he just pushed, you know, like I said, I'm alpha, I'm Draven, I push. It's probably the worst mindset in the game, and there's so many Draven players, they do it because, you know, they do so much damage to the minions. So they don't last hit them, they just hit them and push, and it's just really bad. So yeah, I hope this gives you guys some idea of that you shouldn't always push and you shouldn't always race. You shouldn't always have a slow push. You should kind of find that balance. And honestly, I would say the best way to figure out what laning state to have is just from experience. You should test out something and see if it works. Like one of the things that I did like probably for over a month, it was trying to test like recalling while the lane is slow pushing into me. And often when I came back to the lane, the entire lane was just crashed into my wave without anyone touching it because I left too many minions and the enemies. So I just killed my wave too fast and I couldn't arrive back in time and they were pretty much dead to the tower. So that was something that took me a really long time to learn. And yeah, as I said, it's not, this is a video that shows what I focus on as a master AD carry. It's not something you can just learn overnight, but if you take habits and maybe take some notes to this video, like the 4 key points, my bad. I think you guys really have a good chance of improving at the game. And I will also upload more videos on different things that I focus on as an AD carry. This was mainly just wave management. I'll probably do something on trading and probably something on mid game and maybe also something on more of like objective control where wave management will probably be mentioned again because it's just such a big part of the game. And I think on one last note, I would just say that if you want like a general rule to pushing, as soon as you know your enemy is pushed, you always want to try and push back to get that counter recall. Do always make sure that you get a recall if your enemies get a recall, pretty much. You don't always have to do it, like the later you get into the game, the more acceptable it is, but especially in the early game, the enemies coming back with items, and if you still are just sitting on that Doran's Blade and a potion, you're pretty much not able to trade with them anymore, and they'll just hard shove into you, and they'll poke you out of lane, and then you'll be forced to take a really bad recall. So matching enemies' recalls are really important, and matching like recalls based on how much gold you have, so you have to buy the right items. Like let's say if you're playing Kai'Sa, you even want to be able to buy like a, what's it called, the lethality item, the 1100 gold one, I forgot the name, so the Dirk, the pickaxe, or a nuclear. That's like the 3 main items. You pretty much want to try and get one of those. And if it's an absolute disaster, you can always go back and then buy 2 long swords or something. But that's like the main things you want to go. So you try to base your entire like recalling and pushing around that. I hope this video made sense and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys later in another video. Peace out, guys. Much love.